Impression the game you get out with what you put into it. It's like a walk of life. If you're good enough, go out and get it, no more about it.
But not so much control in the centre of the field from Kilkenny as Richie Bennett sends it high and over the bar.
Your mother sends you down to the shop for a pound's worth of goods and she gives you 50 pence. You can't get the pound's worth of goods, can you?
Just about kept in. Oh, well done, Shawnee Buckley. To do that to Tomas O'Shea, he deserves to score from here. One of the highlights of the Sunday game.
Limerick went out there from the word go today. No more about it. They made all the running, that was it. Put the ball over the bar and the back of it, and that's it. No ifs, no buts.
Is there much time left? We have a couple of injuries. Here comes Kieran Carey. Carey leading the charge of the right brigade. 45 metres out. He's a chance to score. He's put it high.
There's no sympathy in this game for anybody.
Matt, no sympathy in this game for anybody, and no sympathy for you tonight, I'm afraid, with the Ballysea Ballylanders result. And I suppose the only silver lining in so far is that Mr. Neville still hasn't showed up for work and isn't on the podcast with you tonight, Matt. So I suppose you should be thankful for that.
That's fair me, Raff. That's fair me.
You know, he will be back next week, but just not right now. We're actually live tonight, so if any audience members out there have questions, please feel free to pop them through on Twitter, Facebook, or YouTube, or whichever way you're watching. Matt, I suppose, look, only one place to start this evening for the massive game coming up at the weekend, Limerick versus Galway, Croke Park, 3:30 p.m. on Sunday. And I suppose we'll start with the Galway side first, Matt, and then turn our attention to Limerick. In goals, Éanna Murphy, fullback line of Jack Grealish, Dahi Burke, and Darren Morrissey. Halfbacks, Patrick Mannion, Garrod McInerney, and Fintan Burke. Midfield pairing of Ronan Glennon and David Burke. Then Tom Monaghan, Conor Cooney, and Joseph Cooney in the half-forward line, with Conor Whelan, Brian Kincannon, and Cathal Mannion making up the inside forward line. Switch that around, Matt, and take a look at the Limerick Limerick 15, and indeed the match day panel, which sees most notably the return of Cian Lynch back to the match day 26, something that John Kiley had flagged when we spoke to him last week. Starting lineup of Nicky Quaid, Sean Finn, Mike Casey, Barry Nash, Derek Burns at 5, Declan Hannon centre back, Dan Morrissey on the other wing. Midfield pairing of William O'Donoghue and Dara O'Donovan. Half forward line of Garrod, Hegarty, Kyle Hayes, and Tom Morrissey. Inside forward line of Aaron Gillan, Seamus Flanagan, and Graham Mulcahy. Substitutes, of course, made up by Barry Hennessy, Conor Boylan, Peter Casey, Aaron Costello, Colin Coughlin, Richie English, Robbie Hanley, Cian Lynch, Cathal O'Neill, Oisin O'Reilly, and David Reedy. So, Matt, look, the team's named. Everybody, all the pundits that you're listening to are pointing in a Limerick, are pointing the direction of a Limerick win. I suppose if you break it down and you say Limerick at their best versus Galway at their best, you'd have to say Limerick. But I think there's, I don't know, I won't say an uneasy feeling about it, but you know, Galway are a side that really haven't really fired so far this year, and you'd imagine you're going to see a kick from them at some stage in this championship, and I wouldn't be surprised if it was this Sunday, and if it is, then Limerick are in for a tough battle.
I agree with you totally, Raff, and when Jack and I previewed the championship at the very outset, we were wondering and musing as to who might be Limerick's greatest challengers, and I was of the opinion back then that it would be Galway, and I certainly have had no reason to change my mind since, because I have the sense, just as you mentioned there, that I don't think that they have really fired this year, because in the Leinster Championship they got a draw with Wexford on the very first day down in Wexford Park, and they sort of ambled into the Leinster final after that without being tested. All right, they had Kilkenny and Salthill and they got over them. And, you know, no disrespect to the Wexford, to the Westmeads, the Dublins and the Laois of this world. You know, they weren't really tested now. And I'm giving them a bit of latitude for their defeat in the Leinster final, because I'm honestly convinced that the Leinster final was overshadowed by the whole Shefflin Cody charade, and I think it possibly affected Galway much more. And but they bounced back then and beat Cork, and people will say, all right, that they're lucky. They were lucky to beat Cork, but they won the hurling match, which was all that they set out to do. And you know, there is the perception out there, with justification, that there's a good game in Galway. I would say there's more than a good game in Galway. You know, I think if Galway are ever to be focused now in the current series, this is it. They're down to the last 4. They're like Limerick, they're 70 minutes away from an All-Ireland final appearance. And, you know, if they're to fire, Raff, I think they're going to fire on Sunday. Whether it will be good enough to beat Limerick or not now is another question. But you at the outset of this discussion and this discourse, you went through the 2 teams, and you went through the 26, the Limerick 26. There's a lot of power, and there's an awful lot in reserve. Like when you can go to Croke Park with the like of Peter Casey, Cian Lynch, Cathal O'Neill, on the bench, we've seen Conor Boylan during the year, and he's made some fantastic impacts. You know, he's up there as well with the substitutes. You see Oisin O'Reilly, you know, David Reedy. That they're all over the place. It's a very, very strong panel that John Kiley has at his disposal, and is it a surprise that Peter Casey is not starting? Maybe somewhat of a surprise, because but you must remember whilst he has plenty training, whilst he's 100% fit, and I met him a week ago, and he you know, he was absolutely proclaiming himself and raring to go, but he's probably down on game time and short of game time, and you know, it's in many ways it may not be a surprise that Limerick are starting with Graham Mulcahy, because Graham Mulcahy has, you know, anytime he has come in, he has made such a huge impact. And the work rate, Raff, that he brings to the table is simply phenomenal. And, like, it's very interesting that he should be named at left corner forward, because I thought one of the bright stars of Galway, he's emerging as one of the bright stars and one of the really effective Galway players this year, is Jack Grealish. So Jack Grealish will have more than his hands full. And that's apart from the early goal he got against Cork, which was of a fortuitous and a lucky nature. But he will have more than his hands full with Graham Mulcahy. He will not be getting the opportunity to do softies up the field. So in a way, it's not a huge surprise that he's on. The restoration of Kyle Hayes, the centre forward, is interesting. I was just wondering in the last couple of games when he was moved to the forwards, if he's as happy there. I think he was so good coming onto the ball from half back. But obviously, John, Kiley, Paul Kennard, they're seeing him in training, and they're obviously quite happy with what they're seeing.
Yeah, certainly are. And I suppose, look, if you look at at Peter Casey and the luxury of having him and Cian Lynch on a bench, it does give John Kiley, I suppose, serious options as well, doesn't it? It gives him the ability to reshuffle his pack if he needs to, be it first half or second half in this match. That he does have options. And when you see those two names on a substitute bench, it should give Limerick fans an air of confidence.
It should, and you see what we were talking about there is mainly strength on the bench in the forward department. But you must remember that Richie English is an all-star defender. He's on the bench, and like if things were not going that well at the back, there is nothing to stop John Kiley from reverting to putting Kyle Hayes back in defence, as well as having the personnel there. There are the options there. So Limerick are in a very good place, Raff. And when you'll be posing the question towards me at the end of this conversation as to who I think will win, I might as well preempt it and tell you now that I think Limerick are going to win. And I fear that there's a huge game in Galway, but I'm equally happy that if the huge game was to come next Sunday, that I think Limerick will cope with it.
Matt, we've done 189 episodes of this, and to be honest with you, I'd struggle to find out. I'd struggle to pull the episode where you'd say that the Limerick hurlers were not going to win if you go back over the 4 or 5 years we've been doing this.
But you struggle to find me being wrong too often as well,
It's like that old thing about the stop clock, isn't it? It's right twice a day, but let's hope it doesn't. Let's hope the clock doesn't stop on Sunday anyway. That's for sure.
Well, I hope it doesn't stop. But I think Limerick, if Galway were to bring their best game to the table on Sunday, I honestly think that Limerick have the wherewithal to rise to it and deal with it. But as you said at the outset, it will make it difficult for them. And do you know what? That mightn't be a bad thing. It mightn't be a bad thing. A good, tough Munster final, a good All-Ireland semi-final, tough All-Ireland semi-final. No better preparation for an All-Ireland final.
Yeah, and I think if you look back to the interviews we did with John Kiley and Barry Nash prior to this weekend, I suppose the key thing from one of the key things for both of them as well was that Clare game served as a huge test and as a huge preparation in terms of going toe to toe with a ferocious rival, literally eking every minute out of it and coming out the right side of the result as well, which is crucial. And then having that 4-week period to kind of to gather yourself and to refresh yourself and to do whatever you needed to do. And very interesting as well from that pre-game or from that that pre-game press conference as well, that John Kiley was saying that this Limerick bunch is a different bunch to the bunch in 2019, an older squad, more mature squad, that the break was probably better to them this time than it would have been in 2019, where maybe matches would have been better to them. So it's weird. Like, there's a different narrative no matter which way you come off those 4-week breaks. If you lose, you're rusty. If you win, if you win, then you're rested. So it's hard to know, but I just get a feeling that Limerick are in a good place in terms of preparation, in terms of their mental preparation, physical preparation ahead of this. They just seem to be tipping away, under the radar is the wrong way to put it, but they just seem to be kind of very content within themselves. I'd say confident, but by no means complacent.
Yeah, I agree with you there. And of course, John Kiley, in his unique forthrightness and forthright self, said, that not only had the players matured, but that the management had matured, and that they knew how to manage the situation much better. And that is the case. And you go back again to the good game. You talk about the good game in Galway and how Limerick would deal with it. Like, Clare couldn't have brought a better game than they did to the Munster final, and Limerick dealt with it. So, they have experience in dealing with that, and they have experience in dealing with the extra time that it takes. We would say, like it happened in the 2018 semi-final against Cork, and I'm quite happy that Limerick are in a very, very good place, and roll on Sunday, I'd say.
Roll on Sunday. We can't wait for it. Matt, where do you think Galway are most capable of causing Limerick problems if they are going to upset proceedings or upset the form book or the bookies, I suppose, even on Sunday? Where do you think if you're Shefflin, is it a case of you go after Limerick physically? What do you do?
Yeah, of course. The one thing about going after Limerick physically is that Galway, are the best equipped side to go at Limerick physically. Because if you look back at 2017 when Galway won the All-Ireland final, one was just longing, that we could put together a team with the same type of physicality that Galway have, and they're still the same. I would be worried about the Galway full forward line, Raff. I would be worried about the the full forward line. They're three very, very good hurlers. I'm a huge fan of Conor Whelan, as anybody that follows this podcast will know.
Yeah, he's a great player.
I think he's an absolutely fabulous player.
He's the kind of fellow you'd love to have him on your team. Like he's a warrior. Like he's a great bit of stuff. Like fine player.
Absolutely, I'd love to be shouting with him rather than against him. He's just one of those players. But I think they have a dangerous, definitely a dangerous full forward line. No, we have an excellent full back line. But the way the breaks can go on the square if you put it in often enough, you'll get somewhere. But if you go through the field, I think Limerick would be in a position to exploit the Galway half back line. There are three good hurlers there, but I think there's a lack of pace in the half back line. And Garrod McInerney is named at centre back. Now the discourse for the last week or 10 days was that he wouldn't make it. So the question is he fully fit? He probably is. And Henry Shefflin going into the Cauldron, that's an All-Ireland semi-final, isn't going to put in a player that's less than fit. But I honestly think that that's an area I think where Limerick can get a very distinct advantage. Of course, we've three fabulous hurlers there, and they're absolutely three massive men. Like, if you take Garrod Hegarty, Kyle Hayes, Tom Morrissey, do they come any bigger? And I feel that they will give Galway trouble in that position, in that particular area of the field.
Yeah, just looking at the Limerick Tears, it's team there as it's popped up on screen, and you could see the 1-15 and the 26. And as we switch over to Galway, that's their 1-26 there. So yeah, plenty of talent on both sides, Matt. I suppose, look, the carrot here for Limerick, obviously another All-Ireland final and a chance to do that elusive 3 in a row. But, this is a team that never really, and I know they trot out, cliches, but it's not a cliche really insofar as that Limerick really do just approach it one game at a time. And yet again, to go back to John Kiley in the press conference there, he was saying that he doesn't even watch the other semi-finals, or he doesn't watch the other side of the draw, because he's only focused on what's in front of him. And he is basically of the mindset that he doesn't give any mental space or mental energy towards stuff that's not on his horizon. And it's an incredible, I suppose, kind of insight into the focus of not just John Kiley, but that runs throughout the group as well. They will just take it one game at a time, and all they'll be looking for is the 70 or 80 minutes, as we tend to go to in Hurling these days, on Sunday afternoon.
Yeah, 3 in a row is not going to be discussed in the Limerick camp. Kilkenny and Clare are not going to get even honourable mention in the Limerick camp, because that is one of the secrets of their success. Their sole focus is what's next in front of them, and it's an approach that has stood them in very, very, very good stead. And this comes from the manager and his management team that insist that this is the way to go. This is the way to approach these games. And I look, the focus, the minute Clare was over, obviously Limerick didn't know who they were facing until Galway and Cork. But they had a bit of downtime and a bit of recovery time. But the minute the final whistle was gone in Cork and Galway, the focus was solely on Galway. And what happens between Clare and Kilkenny, Raff? John Kiley cannot control. He's no control whatsoever over. It's what happens between Limerick and Galway. It's as simple as that.
Yeah, it certainly is. Matt, a comment in here from Brito O'Dwyer says hello to you and hello to me. She said hello to me, but she doesn't know me. So I'd say she's a listener probably in the last year or two, Matt. It was myself and yourself with the original crew on this podcast, and we'll have to put Neville in his place every once in a while. She also mentions that we should listen to the Dalo podcast, funnily enough, probably not knowing that I do have a hand in producing that one as well. And Dalo and the boys, I suppose, a lot of them they were all kind of tipping Limerick, but Dalo just urged that little bit of caution to this game at the weekend. And I think myself and yourself in the same boat there. Message also in from Ken Power. I'll try not to swell your head too much here, Matt, but he says, Matt is the man. He's always never far off. So message in there for Ken Power. And finally, Christy Kyo, very exciting team and subs. It'll take an exceptional performance from Galway. So yeah,
I agree with Christy Kyo there in what he's saying, in that even the best performance that will come from Galway, I think we're equipped with. Thanks very much, Ken Power. And Breda Dwyer, I know that's Breda out in Croom. Good evening, Breda. How are you? Yeah, it's grand when you're, that. We just don't. I think there's an air of confidence going around the place, Raff, and I've been listening to the narrative going around, and thanks be to God I'm out and about again as much as I used to be, and meeting people, and there's a lot of dangerous discourse going out there that Galway are being totally disregarded, and that to me is disrespect. And it's 70 minutes. It's two teams over 70 minutes. It's a 2-horse race. Now Limerick are favourites, but and they're probably firm favourites, but they're not raging favourites, because we've known what Galway have done in the past to teams in the semi-final, and it's a good Galway team. Make no mistake about it.
Absolutely. Message in from Liam O'Brien. Hi, Raff and Matt. Great to hear your analysis. Keep up the great work. Regards, Liam O'Brien. Liam, of course, from the Queenie Limney Facebook page, which does great stuff to promote the game. And
absolutely. Well done, Liam. Actually, he's doing great work. Not just at the weekends, but the 7 days of the week. Well done, Liam. Keep it up.
Matt, I don't know if you had a chance to listen to the Dalo podcast this earlier today or not, but there apparently Landers and TJ stopped off in Bruff for a few drinks last weekend. I'd say a few now, but a few could have led to more few, and ended up playing cards with Davy Clark. And ended up, I won't say they opened up a casino out in Bruff, because obviously there's gambling laws and all that would have to be adhered to, Matt. But there was, we put together a poster of them. I don't know if you ever saw that movie, The Colour of Money, but we had our own version of The Colour of Money with our very own Landers as the boss man, and the head of TJ Ryan with the pool cue. So yeah, there's quite a few stories coming out of Bruff last weekend after those two passed.
Who's the lady in the background?
We don't know who that is. I think she's from the original movie, so she's. But the full truth of this has yet to filter out through the grapevine. But those two, as you well know from hosting them out in was it Gary? Was it Gary's? Where is it? Ballylanders or Gary Spillane? A few weeks ago. Ballylanders, as you know from hosting them out there, when they get together, it can be quite a fun time.
As you know quite well, Raff, it's not hosting them; it's just letting them loose.
Minding them more than hosting them is what it is, Matt, and keeping them out of trouble. Okay, Matt, I know you've said it already. Get off the fence and tell me who and by how much between Limerick and Galway.
Limerick by 3 or 4 points.
3 or 4 points. Okay, that's grand. Breda Dwyer is back in to say we got to get cozy with caution. Surely the years of suffering got to subside. I'm sure it's 50-50, but these years are special. I am not Croom, capital of Limerick is in. She's not Croom, capital of Limerick is in Doon with famous 4 hurlers. Thanks for the mention. So Breda has Breda is Doon, not Croom.
What did they say? There's more Jack Barrys than one, so there's more Breda Dwyers than one.
There you go. Matt, okay, moving on quickly. We obviously have more than a passing interest in the other semi-final, and of course we will know who Galway or Limerick will know by the time, I suppose, 7 o'clock, half 7, depending on whether it goes to extra time or penalties or any of that drama on Saturday evening, who they'll be facing in that final. And it will be one of either Clare, or Kilkenny. Matt, I have a sneaking feeling for Clare in this one. I don't know why. I just think they get around teams, they get about teams, and they cause teams difficulty. Like, they gave Limerick a serious run of it. I will say that they did look in the extra time like they hit the wall a small bit in terms of energy. I don't know that they got the same influence off the bench that Limerick got. I think that they are. I just think they're a good side. I know they'll probably learn an awful lot from that game against Wexford, where they really, I suppose, if Wexford had a few extra bodies, I think it was Derry Egan said that Wexford literally ran out of bodies in that match, and you could see that as the further they were going through the depth chart, the harder it was getting, So again, I don't know. I think both sides have. I think it's going to be hard to call, but I just have a sneaky feeling for Clare.
Yeah, I agree with you with all that you say about Clare, and they get at you and they get around you, but I think Kilkenny get into the opposition's heads, and I think it was never more evident than in the under-20 final to a degree this year, and particularly in the Leinster final. And now they're like Limerick are coming in with a 4-week break. But like, who's more experienced in dealing with breaks, and whether they're 2 weeks, 3 weeks, or 4 weeks than Brian Cody? He's been around such a long time, and his enthusiasm hasn't it hasn't dwindled one iota. If we saw the way he went around Croke Park and hugged his players and was jumping up after winning his 18th Leinster title when they beat Galway. I'm going for Kilkenny on this one. There's a share of hurt in Kilkenny, like that. They're after losing a couple of All Ireland semi-finals. That they lost in lost an All Ireland semi-final to Cork. They lost an All Ireland semi-final to Waterford. No, I'm going for Kilkenny. I'm going for Kilkenny. It's just a hunch I have, and they're two very, very good sides, very good sides, and Clare really have built on something this year, and they Clare lit up the Munster Championship, Raff, no question about it. And I'm just wondering, did Clare peak for the Munster final?
Yeah, I suppose with that quarter final against Wexford, was that indicative of a team who had left an awful lot of energy on the field after that Munster final, and just really only sparked in the last kind of 9-10 minutes of that match? But I mean, you'd imagine that if their injury profile is okay, which it seems to be, that they should have had enough time to kind of recharge a bit for this semi-final somewhat. I don't know, like, it's a tricky one. I just have a sneaking feeling that it'll be Clare, but I'd love to see a Limerick Kilkenny final, to be honest with you. I don't think I could handle you could imagine the ticket rush if it's going to be a Limerick. If it was a Limerick Clare final, it'd be crazy altogether, but a Limerick Kilkenny final mightn't be as difficult to start out in terms of tickets, so I'd be going hopefully for that route.
Well, I don't mind who we have to play, who we play in the Munster or in the All Ireland final. We've yet to beat Kilkenny in an All Ireland final. In recent years, but back in the 30s and in 1973, like we've a very good tradition against Kilkenny in All Ireland finals, as good as any other county, better than most. But if it was an all Munster final, that wouldn't be unique for Limerick either, in so far as that the last two finals were all Munster finals against Waterford and against Cork. So being ready for an all Munster final and what it might bring, I don't think should pose a problem to John Kiley and his management team and his players. But having said that, the nub of your question, or your original question, is who do I think will win? I think Kilkenny will win, but it'll be tight.
Yeah, fair enough. we should, I suppose, mention as well, there's serious Limerick interest in this minor final at the weekend, insofar as we have Leo O'Connor, who we know very, very well, managing the Offaly Hurlers, who will take the field against Tipperary in Nolan Park on Sunday. But we also heard yesterday that our very own of this parish, Liam Ahern, is going to be the lead commentator for the game. So, how funny would it be, or how ironic would it be if Liam was going to be doing, or the post match, or was going to be calling the game, where his old former co-commentary partner would be doing running the Offaly setup. So it's there's quite a good Limerick tie in there. And of course, look, as much as we be neutrals in this one, I think on this instance, Matt, we'll both be throwing our weight behind, or our support behind Offaly for this one.
Oh, well, definitely, without a question. I met Leo last Sunday, and if you permit me just for a minute, Raff, I met him in the context of the wonderful senior hurling tournament that was held out in Fedamore, and you had Patrick Kelleher on with your good self.
I did.
Previewing it, and the tournament itself was more than they could have expected. It was. But they made it happen. Let's face it, they made it happen, and they showcased their wonderful facilities out there. And there was a big crowd there, but I think it was a pity that it clashed actually with Charleville Show, which was making a return after 3 years, and the weather in the morning wasn't that kind and not that conducive to goad people to get up and get out, but it was a wonderfully run tournament, and the utmost respect was paid to it by all 4 competing clubs. It was won out by Capitagle from Galway, the only one of the 4 clubs that had never won their own county championship, senior championship. But I think that day is not going to be too far away. And of course, they had among them podcast expert James Cahill, who we had a great chat with. James, who got injured in the dying moments of the 2018 All Ireland, the Galway goalkeeper, and with Patrick Horgan, and we had Robert Downey from Cork on the Glenrover side. We had Cahill Parlin and Kevin Brady from Offaly on the Cool Derry side, who were beaten in the final by Capitagle. And with Patrick Swell, who won the Shield on penalties against the Rovers. The big names were not playing for Patrick Swell for obvious reasons. But a wonderful tournament. Congratulations to Fedamore. Well done, lads. You had a great day. It's the start of something, an annual tournament, and it was carried off to a T. Absolutely a great day out there.
Yeah, and in a very enjoyable format with the 20-minute halves, I think, and you had your semi-finals and your Shield and your cup final and stuff. So yeah, very well done, and fair play to everyone out in Fedamore for running that so well. Breda is back in, Matt.
It's a reincarnation of something. I was making the point out there last Sunday that we had, a tournament was the lifeblood of clubs for many years, and the tournaments were played, for all sorts of things. There was gold medals, there was gold watches, and Raff, tournaments were even played for suitlands. That's a fact. That's a fact. I remember it. So, in carnivals and in festivals in the past, the hurling tournament was very, very often the centerpiece of it. And for many years, if you got a good tournament. If club got a good tournament, it looked after the finances for a good part of the year.
Yeah.
So it's the revival. It's the revival of something that was there in the past, and I think the tournaments were edged out of the GA calendar by the county leagues, hurling and football leagues. They took over from them, and in many ways, it was a pity. It's a pity, even though I would have to say it, Raff, and I've said it on this podcast before. that I thought the hurling league structures in this county for the last 2 years have been excellent. And we can see how good, a testimony to how good they are and how well run they are is that they're all done and dusted.
Yeah, and most of the fixtures for fulfilled, and the last thing you want to see is county leagues is a heap of walkovers, and I think that was fairly that there was an excellent participation rate this year. Matt Breed is back in, and she is in agreement with you, and she thinks it's going to be Cats and the Green Giant. I'm assuming that's Limerick back in the final. Declan Coughlin, I'd like to see Clare versus Limerick in the All-Ireland final. And we also have John Barrett, who says the addition of Keane Lynch and Peter Casey to the subs bench strengthens our options considerably, but Galway are going into this semi-final with nothing to lose and will present a strong challenge on Sunday. Here, say we to that.
That's John Barrett from Galway, my colleague, actually, my work colleague.
There you go, Matt. Yeah. They're all out in force tonight. It's like we'll have to rename it the Matt the Hat Fan Club and just get rid of Treaty Talk from now on going forward. Right, Matt, I think
you're in good form tonight, Raff.
Huh?
You're in good form tonight. We possibly should have the podcast at night rather than by day.
You see, all the children are in bed. Everyone's fed. No one's pulling or dragging out of me. So it's the only time. It's like the Unbelievables. I get a clear run at the day, but I only get a clear run at the day after 10 o'clock at night. So you can see how you could twist that to make sense. Okay, Matt.
I can because I've been through it twice.
We
I'm
also
going through for the second time now.
We also have Camogie this weekend, and a massive opportunity for John Lillis and this side, who, to be honest with you, Matt, they're so due a break, and they're so due, for the effort and the slog that's been put in over the last 3-4 years. I would love to see this bunch get to the knockout stages of an All-Ireland series.
Absolutely. I couldn't possibly agree more with you, Raff. I'm absolutely thrilled with the turnaround that has taken place in their fortunes. And happily I witnessed the last 2 games against Offaly and against Down. And the one thing that is coming through on both games is the absolute resilience of this team. They went in against Offaly, the team that had condemned them to relegation only 6 weeks ago in the relegation final above Moneygall, and they went in having suffered 2 defeats, knowing that a 3rd defeat would put them out of the championship and probably condemn them into a second relegation scrap of the year. And by God, that day out in Cappamore, they put on some performance. And they reversed the result of the relegation playoff. But, they built on it. And last Saturday, Raff, it was a pleasure to be out and doing. Not a pleasure to be there in the first half. And John Lillis was the very first to come out straight after the game and put his hands up and said, that's the worst first. It was the worst half of Camogie all season. And, to a degree, he was right, possibly. They were playing Down, who were actually below him in the standings. They were 9 points to 1 down with a minute to go to half time, and Clare Keating made an absolutely stunning save, Raff. A stunning save. 1-9 to a point, it was game over. But Down added on a point, and just before half time, and we'll have to talk about her in a minute. And you could talk all day and all night.
I know where you're going here. One name, 2 words. Kiva Costello. Am I right?
Kiva Costello, and there was somebody telling me this evening from Adair that they remember her winning an under-12 hurling championship among the boys, and she was the best one of them. Because I drew her down to some of the Adair connections in Kilkenny tonight at the football match, and that's what I was told. But she was simply magnificent. She started a move, and full credit to Kiva Lyons. Kiva Lyons took it on, timed the offload to perfection, and by God, did Cueva Costello bury it in the net. So instead of going in 10-1 down, it was 10-1-1. So it was a real 6-point turnaround. But for all the credit that goes to Cueva Costello, we must credit Clare Keating as well for an absolutely stunning save, because had that goal gone in, and it was point blank, she was straight in front of the goal. It was the Amy McAleenan, the down captain, and Clare brought up the save, cleared it, and but in the second half, it was essentially that the Limerick took over, and Down only got 2 points in the second half. There were two frees from Paul O'Hagan, and actually there were 2 frees in 2 minutes. It brought him back into it, because Limerick had gone 2 points ahead, and when we're talking about Limerick scoring, all the scoring was done by Cueva Costello until the last score of the game. Cueva Lyons got it, and Limerick did get a fortuitous goal. They got a free about 60 metres out. It dropped in. It came in at a lousy point, if you don't mind me using the word, for any goalkeeper, and that it was coming in at the angle of the crossbar and the upright. Very, very, very difficult to deal with it, and it went in. It ended up in the net anyway, and it really put Limerick. But I'm convinced without that break, Raff, that Limerick would still have done it, because the level of performance in that second half from 1 to 15 was simply incredible. Like you just couldn't believe it. The only thing that was the same in the second half from the first half was the colour of the jerseys. Everything else, the performance, it was so heartening. And they're in a very, very good position going to Antrim tomorrow.
I'm going to go through the team there now, Matt, for that. In goals, Clare Keating, Stephanie Wolfe, Muireann Kramer and Marion Quaid. The fullback line, then Mairead Ryan, Sophie O'Callaghan and Niamh Curtin. At midfield, Niamh Ryan and Eva Larkin. Then at half-forward line of Michelle Curtin, Rebecca DeLee and Cueva Costello. Then Cueva Lyons, Lorraine McCarthy and Sarah O'Brien. Interesting there as well, Matt, if you see obviously the subs there as well, 16 down to 26. Manager John Lillis, and then underneath it you see coaches Declan Nash. Declan, I suppose the same Declan who was there previously as head coach.
It is indeed, yeah. It's Declan is back, yeah.
It says a lot about John Lillis to come in and to go back in for a former manager to bring him into the backroom staff. It speaks of a guy who I suppose has no ego in this project and is just there to bring back in the best people around him. And Declan, I've always found, even to deal with on this side of it, has always been a top bloke.
Yeah, and Declan was involved in the pre-match preparations and everything, very, very, very hands-on, as we know, which he has been in the past. And obviously his input is telling, because there's been a complete, it's a transformation. And, some of the girls and some of the connections saying to me after, thanks be to God, that we don't have another relegation fight on our hands, and but if you're to lose a relegation fight in the year, what one do you want to lose? The one in the league or the one in the championship? And they've lost the one in the league, so what? They're playing Division 2 next year. They'd get a right good chance of coming back out of it pretty quickly. But just getting back, and there's no doubt at all about it, but all the headlines are rightly surrounding Cueva Costello. But Limerick Camogie, Raff, have an absolutely wonderful captain. We cannot take it from Marion Quaid. She's absolutely outstanding. She's taken up the big players in the opposition, and the first one was Mairead Tehan, who got 3 goals against us in the relegation final, and literally single-handedly condemned us to Division 2 Camogie next year. I think she restricted her to a point from free.
Yeah.
She was picking up Niamh Mallon last Saturday.
Matt, go through the permutations this weekend. What do Limerick need to do to make it through to the knockouts here?
Simple as avoid defeat. Win or a draw, and they're through to the knockout stages.
Okay, so that's fairly clear. A loss takes them out, Matt. There's no points differential or anything like that. Win or a draw.
No, there's a loss will unfortunately take Antrim to 7 points.
Okay, perfect.
Matt, they would be joining Galway and Kilkenny in the last 6.
Okay,
I'm not contemplating that. I'm not contemplating that. I'm not contemplating a loss. That's a word that it's a word I like to erase from the lexicon. When especially when it's in relation to Limerick. Now the juniors are in with a chance as well. Now the juniors had a very difficult season, and they have a difficult season for a good reason. Like now, they could only muster 15 players on last Saturday, but they got the job done. And you'll probably say now that I'm about to go on a rant, but seeing that you gave me the opening, I might as well conclude. But I won't keep you here all night. But Limerick Singers have 34 players by virtue of various reasons that they had to promote players during the league, and some players were only on the field for 10 or 15 minutes during the league, and that renders them ineligible to play Junior Camogie Championship. And I'm asking the question, where is that going? What is that doing for the promotion of the game? Surely to God, it's time that the powers that be woke up and see that this is not sustainable. And I'd be calling on them, and I've called on them previously with Jack, that at least a girl should have to start 2 senior league games before she would be ineligible to play in the junior championship. So, that there's a shortage of numbers, and that is why. And of course, there are only 2 of the squad that were narrowly beaten in the All-Ireland semi-final by Armagh last year, who are available this year. Now, a number of them have gone abroad and gone travelling, and you must remember, Raff, that there is that there's a residual desire to travel this year. In that for 2 years travel was prohibited. So, there's a lot of people making up ground. So I just see the team up there in your graphic now, and there's a number of new players that are coming in there for, I think, their first game of the season. Or you have Aoife Corbett from Newcastle West, quite a good player coming in there now, and you have Ella Whelan, who played junior last year. She's coming back. So the permutation is much the same. If they win the game, they're in with a chance of going through to an All-Ireland semi-final, not quarter-final, because there's only semi-finals in the June. So
okay.
I'm not. Don't ask me if I think they'll win, because I don't think I think it's unlikely, because Antrim are very, very strong. But they will learn from the experience. And the main thing was that they didn't go through the season without a win, and they got a good win last week. And fair credit to them, fair play to them.
Okay, Matt, we are under the pump for time, so we will just run quickly through the senior football results from the last few days. But first up, this is the Ballysteen team warming down after their victory over your very own Ballylanders tonight. And if I'm not mistaken, that's Mr. Paranahan in the middle of the warm down there with his arms folded, looking like he's not doing what he should be doing, Matt. And that's very unlike Pa, isn't it?
Well, I think there's an element of satisfaction about his poses. Job done.
Job done. And look, you're lucky it's me.
Did you have to put up that image? Did you?
A very satisfied Ballysteen team, Matt. I remember watching the Ballysteen Ballylanders quarter-final back a few years ago over in Kilmallock. That really seesaw game that I think was it Danny Froon's goal Jimmy Barry Murphy's goal in the
Jimmy
last
Barry
minute.
Murphy's goal, yeah.
That swung it back up. So there's history there between them, and another chapter of that history was completed this evening.
There's an intervening chapter in that Ballylanders beat him in the county semi-final in 2020.
There's that too. Look, we'll start with Group 1. Newcastle West 2-7, Monaleen 8 points, Claghon 2-9, Galway 2-9, a cracking affair there. Onto Group 2, Adair 13 points, Galtee Gales 6, Ballysteen 2-7, Ballylanders 2-3. And just through the intermediate one there while we have it, De Piercy 12, St. Helens 9, Drumbroadford 113, Fodder Casey's 2-8, Gerald Griffin's 11, Rathkeel 6. That would be between two of the big teams in the intermediate division there. So Matt, some big results over the weekend so far in the football.
Yeah, and you didn't mention last night's results, and I was out at the Kildimo Palace Kenry St. Kieran's game, and what a game we had. It was a very, very, very good, a very, very good game, and it showcased a lot of good things about Limerick football. But Kildimo Palace Kenry, they fielded 8 of the players that featured in last year's county final win over Rathkeel, and for 50 minutes, Jack or Raff, there was only going to be one winner. Or they appeared to be only going to be one winner. Like, really, for their first game, their historic first game at senior level, they hit the ground absolutely running, and contributed to a great game. Now, they had, with 12 minutes to go, they had eased into a 4-point lead, and they were awarded a penalty. And Peter Nash took the penalty, and there was nothing wrong with the penalty. He geared it seemingly away from the goalkeeper, but Ian Mackesy in the Kieran's goal, he just guessed right and got to it and saved it. Had that gone in, we have had the first surprise of the competition, because St. Kieran's, and the only thing that you can judge on, rather than going back, we'll say, to last year, how a club did, would be the recent league. And St. Kieran's got to the concluding stages of the league. They got to the final and were narrowly beaten by Newcastle West. So, like, if that's the criterion for form coming into the championship, they were in a very, very good place. But St. Kieran's got a goal, Jack, Bruff, as good a team goal as I've seen, and it was finished. Both in its its creation and its execution. Its execution by Seamus Mangan was excellent. It brought it down to 5. It brought the lead down then from 4-1, and they nibbled away at it and just got in and just got over the line. But Kildimo Palace Kenry will be extremely, extremely, extremely disappointed. It was an opportunity for them to get the campaign off to a winning start, and their next game up is neighbours Adair, which isn't a very palatable prospect. And I saw Adair tonight against Galtee Gales, and I thought I definitely saw a team that, in my opinion, Raff, are definitely contenders. If anybody thinks that Adair are gone away after last year's defeat in the final, forget it. Now, Hugh Burke did not play. Tom Childs didn't play for Galtee Gales, nor Sean McGrath. Sean McGrath picked up an unfortunate injury during the week, which ruled him out. But there was a display of point scoring by none other than Mikey Lyons. The evergreen Mikey Lyons, I think he must have, they won by 13 points to 6. Mikey must have got 7 or 8 of those points. So got a couple of excellent points from play. So, yeah, they are, from what I've seen, are contenders. And you mentioned Claghon and Galway there. That was a draw thanks to a late goal for Galway. Claghon appeared to have picked up a first brace of points, but they were undone by a very, very late goal for Galway. So it ended up a point apiece there. But from my discussion with Jack, I think the games went more or less as we expected, apart from a certain Battle of the Ballys. Mr. Neville diligently stuck with Ballysteen. I religiously stuck with Ballylanders. So he gets a point there in the head-to-head. But,
Okay, Matt, before we move on from the club football, quick look ahead. I suppose the quarterfinals from last weekend has determined Kerry Dublin in one half of the All-Ireland semi-finals, and on the other side it is Galway and Derry. Matt, of those four, pick one.
My heart and my head, Kerry.
Your heart and your head. So there's no divergence from the green and gold as far as you're concerned, be it Ballylanders or be it Kerry.
I was worried about Kerry going into this quarter-final for the simple reason that they didn't really have a test in Munster, and that's no disrespect to Cork and Limerick. But they got a test from Mayo, and they'll have it out of their system. And I think that they will be ready for they'll be ready for the Dubs.
Okay, Matt, thanks to everybody who watched in this evening. We've kept it under an hour, 55 minutes, which is good going for us to get everything crammed into such a small space of time. We'll be back, I suppose, next week, myself, yourself, or Jack, in whichever form that may be, to discuss hopefully an All-Ireland semi-final victory for Limerick, as well as a bit more action over the weekend. But before we go here, Brito Dwyer has back in with one more message. Huge kudos, Matt. Very entertaining and much knowledge shared. He's better than any Google. There you go now, Matt. And a great show. So you've been compared to Google, the Oracle of Limerick GA, Matt O'Callaghan. Listen, Matt, great to have you. Great to see you back out at games once again. We're delighted to have you pottering around the place and tormenting us all and telling us telling us all our mistakes. So it's great to have you back, and we look forward to seeing you up in Croke Park for the tea and sandwiches at halftime or before the match, or whichever way it falls.
We might go before this time.
We might go before. We'll get there in plenty time. Listen, Matt, thanks for joining us, and we shall chat to you hopefully on Sunday evening after a Limerick victory.
Yeah, thank you very much, Raff.
The impression again we get out with what you put into. It's like a walk of life. If you're good enough, go out and get it, no more about it.
But not so much control in the centre of the field from Kilkenny as Richie Bennett sends it high and over the bar.
Your mother sends you down to the shop for a pound's worth of goods, and she gives you 50 pence. You can't get the pound's worth of goods, can you?
Just about kept in. Oh, well done, Shawnee Buckley. To do that to Tomás O'Shea, he deserves to score from here. One of the highlights of the Sunday game.
Limerick went out there from the word go today. No more about it. They made all the running, that was it. Put the ball over the bar and the back of it, and that's it. No ifs, no buts.
Is there much time left? We have a couple of injuries. Here comes Kieran Curry. Curry leading the charge of the right brigade. 45 metres out. He's a chance to score. He's put it high. He's put it over.
There's no sympathy in this game for anybody.